Welcome to another Ask Katrina. Today's question is, Katrina, I'm a new exec and I want to show up and exec correctly. Tell me the components of executive presence and how I apply each one of them for success. It's a long question, but it's a critical question, right? Because we all want to be successful in our careers. I mean, heck, here at Legend Leaders, that's what we teach you to do, right? We help you achieve the professional success that you desire so that you can have the personal freedom that you deserve, right? So because we know we want to achieve that professional success, how do we get there? Well, as a new executive, it makes logical sense that we want to show up and display that executive presence, right? And that's part of that learning curve that we talk about all the time. That as a first-year executive, we're surprised that the learning curve is so steep. We're surprised that it takes 12 months for the typical first-year executive to generate consistent results. And part of that growth comes from figuring out how to show up and display executive presence. And so there are three critical components to executive presence. You've probably heard them, but let's talk through them together and let's really anchor in what those three components are, because when you understand what they are, then you can understand how you can show up, display those three components, and ultimately be that executive and exude that presence that you need to exude in order to be successful. Okay, ready? Let's do this. So the first is communication. We're going to show up and display executive presence. The first one is communication. How are we communicating? Am I showing up and communicating confidently? Right? Like you can hear my voice right now. I'm confident. I'm clear. I'm paced. I'm measured. It's intentional communication versus, well, I don't know. Hi, how you doing? You doing okay? It's kind of good to be here. I hope you kind of like what I have to say. No. Executive presence, part of that communication is confidently and with certainty conveying what we're here to convey. Now, it's not arrogance, right? There's some humility there. It's what I call humble confidence, right? I'm going to show up. I'm going to share what I'm here to share. I'm not going to overstep. I'm not going to talk about areas of the business or ideas that aren't mine to share, either because that's not my part of the business, or I don't have the knowledge that I need to have to talk about those components of the business, right? I'm going to stay in my lane, but I'm going to confidently stay in my lane. I'm going to confidently communicate what I know. I'm going to know how and when to communicate it. And I'm going to show up and serve through my communication. Okay. Now, there are other components of communication that go in with that. Not only the tone, not only the pace, the words that we use, right? There's typically a rule, written or unwritten, in the corporate space that talks about the fact that these are the words you can use, these are the words you can't use, right? You want to keep your job, you don't want to keep your job. Communication is critical, not only in how we show up and do it, but also in the words that we use and the way in which we show respect. So communication is critical. Remember, as an executive, the key way that we get things done is that we communicate and we influence other people to take action. So if we're going to show up and be the executive that we're meant to be, we have to effectively communicate. The other thing, the other piece that comes into executive presence is the way that we dress, okay? And so you'll notice that the majority of the time when I make videos for you, I'm dressed at least reasonably professional. That's ingrained in me through my career. Right now, we all have different definitions of professional dress. And as we continue to move out of, the early 2000s and, as we continue to grow in the culture in which, and the times in which we live in, the definition of professional dress has tended to change, right? So for example, I'm a pharmacist by training. Through pharmacy school, through all the things that I did throughout my professional career, it was always dress. There was a dress code, and it was very professional. Now, you can wear jeans, you can wear tennis shoes. It is not as formal and quote unquote professional as it has to be. And so that's changed. You've got to understand how your organization, and equally as important, how your industry defines professional dress. Okay. So we've got to learn that. And no doubt you're working for an organization, so get the dress code. every organization that I'm aware of that's reasonably large has a dress code that not only defines what you cannot wear, but it defines what you should wear based on the role that you fill. Okay? So take a look at that. And the third piece is what they call gravitas, right? It's essentially your personality. It's how you personally show up and you use your gifts and your talents that are uniquely you to fill the role. Now, this is probably one of the hardest things for us to talk about. Hey, I know how to communicate. Someone can teach me that. Hey, I know how to dress. I know what to wear, what not to wear. I may like it. I may not. Okay, but at least I'm clear. The third component is a little gray, right? This gravitas situation, because how do I show up as me? And what's safe to show up as me? Right? What can I share? What should I not share? I say on a regular basis, we bring ourselves to work every day. For some people, that's a great thing. For some people, that's probably a risky thing. But nevertheless, it's how you show up. It's your personality brought into the role. It's why, as an executive, you can look at other people, and women do this, like it or not, but women will look around and go, ooh, she's a little too flirty. Okay, if that's truly the truth, we're not judging, we're observing. She's a little too flirty. That could be dangerous for her. He's a little too flirty. That could be dangerous for him, right? When we're showing up and our personalities put us at risk, that could be a problem. So how do you know how to show up and be this person that is appropriate in the space? And so what I would tell you again is, what are the core values of the company? What are they asking you to do? How are they saying you should show up on a daily basis? And typically what I would say is, if those core values align with your personal internal core values, you usually are not going to have a problem. Okay. You're not going to show up and put on the face of the Friday night, let's go hang out with friends face that you would put on in that situation. You're going to show up and put on your professional face. You're going to show up and be the professional, communicate effectively, wear the clothes that, show that you own the role, that you're meant to be where you are. And you're going to bring in the parts of your personality that show up your talents and your gifts that help contribute and drive impact to the organization. That's the answer to this question. As always, go and be legendary.